Hello everyone, it's your host, your friend, your boy, JetBlock, the one and only, here with another exciting video. In this video, I'm going to be talking about how was my day today on July 8th, 2020, and what are my plans for tomorrow, July 9th, 2020. If you guys want to talk about anything that we discuss in today's video, or just want to talk in general, feel free to hit me up in the comment section below, or to message me on our Discord, link available in the description. So, without further ado, let's get started. First off, I'm going to be talking about how the BlackRock Symbiote and the Gateway process remind me of Weapon Ultra. So, in case you guys aren't familiar with what I'm talking about when I mention the Gateway process, that means you guys probably didn't watch my video from yesterday. If you want to check out yesterday's video, I have a link available in the description box below. If you don't know what I'm talking about when I mention the BlackRock Symbiote, again, talked about that in yesterday's video, so I highly recommend checking out yesterday's video if you want to learn more about the BlackRock Symbiote. And if you guys don't know who Weapon Ultra is, I actually did a ton of videos about Weapon Ultra, but I'll have a link in the description box below to my Who is Weapon Ultra video, in case you guys aren't familiar with the character. So, like I mentioned a moment ago, yesterday I talked about the CIA declassified document that acted as a detailed guide for teaching agents how to astral project, time travel, manipulate reality, travel to other dimensions, and fight out-of-body entities. This is the gateway process thing that I mentioned a second ago. I also talked about DC Comics' BlackRock Symbiote. I have been thinking about the open source superhero Weapon Ultra again recently, and how he could be related to the BlackRock Symbiote and the gateway process. Related as in, like, if you wanted to tie these things together, how organically could you do so? And I feel like you could do so rather well. Weapon Ultra, he's an open source superhero character. He has a symbiote that he wears that gives him super strength and the ability to fly. And the BlackRock Symbiote also gives its wearer super strength and the ability to fly. I actually did a video talking about Weapon Ultra's weaknesses back in the day, and I talked about how if his symbiote behaved like a symbiote from the Marvel universe, that it would be weak to like heat and sound-based attacks. But if his symbiote worked like how the DC Comics BlackRock symbiote works, which it kind of does in a way, like they seem similar when it comes to the abilities that you gain from it. If it works like that symbiote, then its biggest weakness would be that the symbiote will leave its host if it believes that its host is too weak. So it would be interesting if Weapon Ultra had a weakness similar to DC Comics symbiote BlackRock. Because if Weapon Ultra happened to be like losing in a battle or something, maybe the symbiote would start to like try and like get off of his body. So he needs to do something quickly in order to turn the tide of battle, or else his symbiote might leave him in the middle of a fight. And because Weapon Ultra is like the protector of the universe, I imagine that he fights a lot of like cosmic threats. So if it leaves him in the middle of a fight and he's like in the middle of outer space, he can just kind of die. You know what I mean? Now keep in mind, the BlackRock symbiote and the Weapon Ultra symbiote are different things. The DC Comics BlackRock symbiote also kind of makes you a little crazy. It makes you think that like aliens are superior to humans, and the BlackRock symbiote also will make you, I mean, depending on like the allegiances of your friends, like if your friends are like, well, we want to protect humanity, you'll be like, well, screw my friends, and you'll like fight them. Because Batman, when he gets the BlackRock symbiote, he turns on Superman and decides to fight him. And it's a pretty cool design, actually, to see Batman with the BlackRock symbiote and everything. Also, here's an image that I made of Weapon Ultra in DC Universe Online. And you can see Weapon Ultra does kind of favor Batman a little bit. So seeing Weapon Ultra next to like BlackRock symbiote Batman is kind of a cool idea. Maybe that would be like a cool fanfiction crossover for somebody to make. Like BlackRock Batman and a matter of fact, BlackRock Batman versus Weapon Ultra would probably be an interesting fanfiction. If you guys write a fanfiction like that, send that to me on the Discord. I might do a video where I do like a dramatic reading of it or something. That could be pretty dope. But also Weapon Ultra symbiote allows him to create energy constructs of anything that he can imagine by pulling energy from the Ultra Zone, which is something that the BlackRock symbiote doesn't do. So when I was thinking about Weapon Ultra's like energy manipulation based abilities, it made me think about the CIA document, the Gateway Process. So the CIA believed that the Gateway Process would allow for patterning, which is this technique that essentially allows you to manipulate reality. If you guys want to pause the video and read this segment about patterning, you can. I actually already read this section of the document about patterning in the previous video, and also I'm going to have a link in the description box below that you guys can check out. It'll be titled Analysis and Assessment of the Gateway Process. This is a link to the declassified CIA file, so if you guys just want to read it there, you guys can read it there. I think they talk about patterning on like page 20. But essentially, since patterning allows you to just manipulate reality through the Gateway Process, and since this was a CIA document, I think it's actually kind of cool that Weapon Ultra's civilian identity, Wayne Holt, is a CIA agent. And when you read through the bio of Weapon Ultra, it doesn't really set him in any specific time period. He was a character that was created in 2016, but you can write Weapon Ultra stories that take place in any time period. So with Wayne Holt being a CIA agent and the Gateway Process being something that was designed presumably for CIA agents to use, since it's a declassified CIA file, it would be really interesting if you made a Weapon Ultra story where Weapon Ultra was a CIA agent back in the 80s who was trained in the Gateway Process, and maybe Weapon Ultra through the Gateway Process either like uses patterning in order to create the Weapon Ultra symbiote, or maybe he travels to like another dimension, because like I said, the Gateway Process also talks about like astral projecting to like other dimensions and stuff like that. Maybe he encounters like some interdimensional being and talks with it, and then that interdimensional being could be the Expanse, because a part of Weapon Ultra's character history is that he meets the personification of space, which is the Expanse, who chooses him to become the protector of the universe. So maybe he could astral project and meet the Expanse as like this interdimensional being, and then the Expanse might like choose him to become the protector of the universe and be the actual source for his symbiote. Like maybe he's like in a meditative state, he's astral projected out of his body, and then when he like exits his meditation, when he exits his meditative state, maybe then he's like, oh, I'm like in the symbiote now, like he granted me the symbiote. Because that could be like a cool idea. By the way, if I seem a little scatterbrained, it's midnight. It's like straight up midnight. So I'm going to be going to bed pretty much immediately after I'm done with this. So I apologize if I'm like all over the place and if my thoughts don't seem as collected as they could be. So enough about Weapon Ultra. We'll get back to the Gateway Process stuff a little bit later in this video. And enough about DC Comics' BlackRock symbiote. Let's talk about WWE 2K Battlegrounds, because that game looks like a lot of fun. Let me read you a description of the game. So, WWE 2K Battlegrounds is going to feature over 70 WWE superstars and legends. It's an all-new, over-the-top multiplayer arcade experience featuring interactive environments and devastating power-ups. You battle your friends online, or you can fight like with couch gameplay, like where you're sitting next to each other playing. And it's just like a cool fighting game. Like, it's not like a wrestling sim game like what you normally would see out of WWE games. Like they said, it's a more arcadey thing. There are power-ups. You're playing as like real wrestlers, but you're doing stuff like shooting fire or like freezing people in ice or creating earthquakes. So you're playing as wrestlers using superpowers, and you can battle up against your friends. It even has a create a character where you're able to create your own wrestler to play as. And it just seems like it's going to be like a cool, fun game. Like, I'm thinking about picking it up legitimately. And there's also like online tournament modes. I don't know. Like, I'm vibing. Let me know if you guys are vibing in the comment section below. Also, I feel like I haven't been showing off as many images today. Well, I guess that's not true. I showed you guys Weapon Ultra. I showed you guys BlackRock Batman. I keep wanting to call it Blackstone. I showed you guys the patterning image. Here's a little screenshot showing the art style for WWE 2K Battlegrounds. Now, the art style is weird. It's kind of like muscly, chibi versions of the wrestlers. But to be honest, I don't really mind it too much. I think it adds to the like crazy arcade experience. And I picked this screenshot because it kind of shows how the power-ups transform the wrestlers essentially into like these mega awesome like super characters. There was actually a mobile fighting game. I think it was called like WWE Immortals or something like that. And it was about like WWE wrestlers from across the multiverse. And because they're from different universes, they have different themes. So some of them are like superheroes, and some of them are like wizards, and some of them are like aliens. But they each possess different powers, and it kind of played like Injustice. Like I'm pretty sure it was just made by the same company that made Injustice. So this is kind of giving me those vibes, but it feels more like a fun, like party arena fighter, because it doesn't play like a Mortal Kombat kind of game. It looks like you're all running around the ring and battling each other with these crazy superpowers. And the way that they described it is that if you just button mash, you'll do cool stuff. But if you understand what you're doing, you can actually add an element of strategy to your gameplay, which makes it seem like it's fairly beginner friendly. Like if you guys just wanted to sit down and have fun playing a fighting game that's like over the top and ridiculous, you can. But if you also want to like, kind of play it in depth, they are saying you can. Like there is more depth than just what's on the surface. Also, you can interact with the environment. In the trailer, they show you like hitting characters out of the ring and into like the mouths of like crocodiles and stuff like that. And I was like, whoa, that sounds insane. That looks insane. So I'm kind of hype about this game. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll have a link to the trailer in the description box. Okay. So enough about WWE 2K Battlegrounds. Let's talk about Umbrella Academy Season 1 recap and why I love recaps so much. I'll have a link to the recap in the description. So I watched the recap for the Umbrella Academy's first season, and I really like the recap. It's only 11 minutes long, so it's a pretty quick watch, and I highly recommend checking it out. Based on that recap, my favorite character is Five. Five is a time-traveling assassin who's fighting to stop the apocalypse. And he also just kind of looks like a kid. Here's a picture of him with a donut. He'll fuck you up. I feel like if you put on a caption here that just says, he'll fuck you up, seems pretty accurate. There's a scene where he like kills like a whole room of people. But he's trying to stop the end of the world, and from that recap, he seems like the most interesting character on the show, in my opinion. But I highly recommend checking out that recap if you guys haven't already. And people are really hyped for Umbrella Academy Season 2. Now, I don't really know if I'm going to check out Season 2 or not. Because the reason why I didn't watch Season 1 of Umbrella Academy is because I heard that the show was very slow-paced. I talked to my friend Dozer about that today, and Dozer was like, yeah, the show is fairly slow-paced, and the show is just kind of eh. But the recap made the show seem really good, because there's no filler. You just hit all the important story beats, and you can just kind of vibe with it. You're like, yeah, like that just sounds interesting. But essentially, the reason why it sounds so interesting is because a recap is like only hitting you with the interesting, important parts. So, yeah, I mean, worst case scenario, I might wait until the Season 2 recap and then watch the Season 2 recap, because the Season 1 recap was pretty good. Last month, I got really hype about Westworld, either last month or the month before, and I watched recaps of the first 2 seasons. I actually watched multiple recaps made by different channels, and I loved all of them for different reasons, because I feel like different channels, even though they're covering like the same material, they put their own like spin on it. Like some tried to be more funny, some tried to be more dramatic, some included like more like personal opinion, but they were all good. And then I tried to watch season 2 of Westworld, as it sounded more interesting than the first season, and the pacing was just too slow. Like I fell asleep and stopped watching it after like a few episodes. Like it wasn't really worth it. So I'm a big fan of recaps. I know not everybody is, but I've spent a lot of today watching recaps actually, like after work. Speaking of recaps, we're gonna transition to the next topic. I also watched a recap of Seven Deadly Sins Season 1. So my two favorite characters from Seven Deadly Sins, based on just that Season 1 recap, are King and Bond. So I think Bond's design, powers, and motivations all seem pretty cool. I like Bond's red and white color scheme, and I vibe with the spiky white hair. Bond appears to be incredibly strong and has the power to regenerate. I like that he's a determined adventurer who goes from wanting to like drink from the fountain of youth to wanting to bring his true love back to life to deciding to travel the world. He just seems like the kind of character who can really carry a show because he always wants to do something new and interesting. I also like how King's story ties well into the story of many other characters in the show and makes him feel almost like a connective tissue for multiple characters. And his background seems to be explored fairly in depth. Like I feel like King and Bond in Season 1 seem to get these really good character moments, and they're kind of built throughout the season. And his motivations change throughout the season as he grows, which I think is really cool as well. So now I'm going to transition from talking about Seven Deadly Sins. Well, I guess before I transition, I need to show you guys some pictures. So this is a picture of King. King actually has another form where he looks quite different from this, but this is like his default form more or less. I like that he kind of has like this hoodie, because it looks like a modern hoodie with like medieval fantasy like vibes to it, because Seven Deadly Sins is kind of a medieval fantasy show. So I like that he kind of has this like modern fantasy aesthetic. So I think that's pretty dope. And then here's Bond's design. I like his color scheme. I like his hair. I think like his red eyes are cool and his fangs. I don't know how I feel about the rest of his outfit. Like the red leather I think is a cool concept. I think the main reason why he has so much exposed flesh is just so that they can show off the regeneration. So that you can like have these scenes where he has holes drilled into his body and you see the holes like fill in and stuff like that. So for that reason, I think the exposed skin is actually kind of cool, like from an artistic perspective. But as someone who like runs into battle and fights people, it does just seem weird that he does have so much exposed skin, regeneration or otherwise, you know what I mean? Like you think you would still want to be safe just in case you get hit with something you can't regenerate from. But yeah, Seven Deadly Sins. Season 1, that recap was pretty good, not gonna lie. At some point I should watch the Season 2 recap. So where are we? Okay, so patterning. So remember patterning? As explained in the gateway process, patterning allows you to essentially manipulate reality, but there are a couple limitations to the gateway process and the way that it describes patterning. So the first big limitation is that the more complex the reality manipulation, the longer it will take for the manipulation to manifest. So the way they describe it, I think if you try to use patterning to do something like fairly like simple, it'll likely happen fairly soon. But if you try to do something really crazy, it may not happen for a like significant period of time. But they claim that with patterning, you can even do stuff that like wouldn't occur otherwise, which makes it seem like you can use patterning to do like impossible stuff. But I imagine that if you do try to use patterning to do something impossible, like make a dragon made of candy or something that can like fly and speak in like 7 different languages, essentially they're claiming that with patterning you could do that, but that probably won't happen for like thousands of millions of years or whatever. They don't give you an exact timeline, but they do say it's like proportionate to how crazy the desire is that you want to manifest. The second limitation that they put on patterning is that if someone attempts to decrease the amount of time needed for reality manipulation to manifest, they could potentially dislocate their reality, which they don't really go into detail on what dislocating your reality is. So I don't know if that means that like reality splinters off and you're put in your own world, or if that means that like you get severed from reality and thrown into like nothingness, or what. Like I have no idea what that means, but it doesn't sound good, and they don't describe it like it's a good thing. That being said, the gateway process does also describe how to time travel. So with that in mind, I don't really think patterning really has any drawbacks, because as long as you use time travel, you could just go back in time and then manipulate reality in the past. So if it's something where it's like you're trying to manifest something so crazy that it could never come into existence within your lifetime, then just travel far enough back in time to where when you do the reality manipulation, it manifests your thing in the present when you want it to. And you could always do test runs, because if you can travel forward and backward in time, you could like travel back and then try to create something, like manipulate reality, and then travel forward to try and find the thing that you created. And then once you find it, you'll be like, okay, so it was like, I went back like 10 years, and then it manifested 5 years later. So I know that if I want to like manifest this thing in the future, I should always go back like 5 years, because it only takes 5 years to manifest X thing. Like you can have like a journal of stuff that you've like tried to manifest before, and like timelines on like, okay, so you have to go back like this long if you want to appear at this time, and da-da-da-da-da. So with that being said, it seems like patterning, as long as you also did like the time travel stuff with the gateway process, doesn't have any limitations, because you could just know exactly how long it takes you to manipulate reality, and then always be able to get what you want as soon as you want it. So next up, I want to give a shout out to Relax and Recap. It's a cool YouTube channel where you can watch recap videos of entire seasons of anime. That's where I checked out the 7 Deadly Sins Season 1 recap. Most of the videos are at most like 13 minutes long. I would argue most are like 11 minutes long from what I've seen. So it is a quick way to brush up on shows if you want to get caught up on some anime. Here is a screenshot of his channel. His most recent video is about like how not to pick up girls from a dungeon, season 2. I haven't checked that out. I actually watched a good bit of his Sword Art Online content because I could never really get into Sword Art Online. Do his recaps make me want to get into Sword Art Online? No. But is it more watchable than trying to like actually sit through the show? Yeah. Yeah, it is. So definitely feel free to check out Relax and Recap. I'll have a link to that in the description box below. That way you guys will be able to check it out. So moving on from that, I tried a meditation from the Monroe Institute being the creators of the gateway process that CIA document is talking about. And it was like a freely available meditation that's available on YouTube. I'll have a link to that in the description box as well. I think you're supposed to wear headphones, but I didn't wear headphones. That being said, the experience was still actually fairly relaxing, but also really time-consuming. It's like a 43-minute long meditation. I wasn't really paying attention to the length of the video when I jumped into it, so I ended up just losing track of time, and then suddenly realizing that it was like 11 p.m., and then being like, I gotta get this video together, which is why I'm making this video so late. I would recommend trying it out and experimenting with it when you have time to. The meditation focuses on trying to separate into your energy body, leaving the physical behind, and then allowing you to just kind of freely manipulate energy. So if you guys want to try and experiment with that, and maybe try and do some of the things that are outlined in the gateway process document using this freely available meditation, feel free to try that out and hit me up. Let me know your thoughts on it. I'm fairly skeptical about a lot of the stuff in the gateway process document for good reason. I talked a lot about that in the last video. But if you guys have any like cool stories or experiences whether you feel like you actually did something or whether you just feel like maybe you had like a cool imaginative meditation experience, definitely feel free to hit me up. I think that'd be cool to hear about. So moving on from there, I'm going to talk about the gateway process a little bit more. I know I've been talking about that a lot today, but if you read into that document, they have a more broken ability than I think a lot of the other abilities. Or maybe it's broken because of the existence of the other abilities, but they describe an ability called problem solving, which in the context of the gateway process is essentially the power to nearly instantly know the answer to any problem, which sounds like one of the most broken powers so far. And I actually have a snippet from the document that we can look at. So, problem solving. This technique involves identifying fundamental problems which the individual wishes to see solved, filling his expanded awareness with his perception of these problems, and then projecting them out into the universe. In this way, the individual enlists the assistance of what Monroe Institute calls his higher self, in other words, his expanded consciousness, to interact with the universal hologram to obtain the information required to solve the problem. This approach may be used to solve personal difficulties, technical problems in the realm of physics, mathematics, etc., practical administrative problems, and so on. Responses to the problem-solving technique may be received almost immediately, but often they come based on developing intuition over the next 2 or 3 days. Frequently, the response comes in the form of a sudden, holistic perception in which the individual suddenly finds that he simply knows the answer in all of its ramifications and completely in context, sometimes without even being able to put his newly found perception into words, at least initially. In some cases, the response may even arrive in the form of visual symbols, which the individual will see with his mind while he is in a focus 12 state, and which he will have to interpret after he returns to normal consciousness. So the idea of being able to know the answer to any problem almost instantly, or even if it's like it takes 2 to 3 days for you to like know the answer. They also mention that you can astral project through time, right? So if you go back in time and then you do like the problem solving stuff. I mean, I guess time travel doesn't fix it. I was thinking about time travel the wrong way because you only astral project back in time. With patterning, I think it makes more sense because you would be manipulating reality back in time. But finding the answer to a question back in time doesn't really help. Or maybe it does since the patterning thing. It doesn't really seem like you have to go back in time for problem solving. I think the back in time thing doesn't matter. Anyways, problem solving in general just kind of sounds broken. It reminds me of Batman when he became the god of knowledge. I don't think I grabbed an image of that. I wanted to grab an image of that. But instead, I guess I'll just show this image of BlackRock Batman because it's cool and I like showing that image. But Batman for a time was sitting in the Metron chair, or the chair of Metron, and it allowed him to essentially ask the chair any question, and the chair would go ping, and he would suddenly have the answer to whatever question he asked. The CIA thought that the gateway process essentially would allow them to turn their agents into like these Batman gods of knowledge. And I imagine they were like, think of the espionage opportunities if we just like could turn a CIA agent into Metron. Which, by the way, I would love to hear you guys' thoughts on the Discord and in the comment section below about the stuff in this document when it comes to like fiction. I feel like you could write so many cool stories that take place in like the 1980s about like CIA agents fighting like interdimensional beings and like experimenting with like time travel, or even like fighting time travelers, or trying to like gain knowledge about the universe. There could be a really interesting story in there about like a CIA agent who tries to like learn some kind of forbidden knowledge, and it becomes like a cosmic horror story, because they talk about like these out-of-body entities that you need protection from. Even in the meditation thing that I did, it talks about like, and you need to ask like these other beings to try and protect you from unwanted outside influences that would move you away from your desires. And it's like all these warnings of like these interdimensional threats or whatever that can mess with you while you're doing it. Sounds cool for a comic book. Definitely would love to see that in a comic book. So if you guys have any like cool ideas for new like superhero characters or supervillains or powers based around the gateway process, definitely hit me up on that. I think that'd be really cool to discuss. So in Marvel Future Fight, I haven't talked about Marvel Future Fight in like a couple days. My Squirrel Girl is now max level with a 6-star with a 6-star mastery and maxed out gear. So my Squirrel Girl is doing pretty good. Now I need to like boost up all her skills so that all her skills are max level, and she'll be a maxed out character. Now you can increase your characters beyond that by making them like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. I don't know if I want to do stuff like that. We'll see. I don't know. Moving on from Squirrel Girl, my Kid Kaiju is now also a 6-star mastery in Marvel Future Fight. So I was able to use a ticket for him. They have these things called mastery tickets and star tickets. So I used a 6-star ticket to make him 6 stars because Gwenpool was already 5 stars, Squirrel Girl was already 6 stars, but Kid Kaiju was like 2 stars. And I'm like, it's gonna take forever to make him go from 2 stars to 6 stars. And I had a 6-star ticket and I had a 6-star mastery ticket. And I was like, if this team is the only team I really want to play, it's not like I'm going to use these tickets on anybody else. And Gwenpool's almost a 6-star, so it would be a waste to use it on her. So I just decided to boost Kid Kaiju with it. Worth it. Kid Kaiju is pretty cool. And now that I've boosted him up so much, I've started actually playing him because he was so underpowered before. He was always on the team, but I would never really play as him. And he is very different from Squirrel Girl and Gwenpool in terms of how you play him. So he's a zoner. He summons monsters to attack for him, even when doing his normal attacks. I kind of thought his normal attacks were going to be like punches and kicks, and then his specials were going to be like summoning monsters. But when you hit his normal attack button, he summons monsters that like start fighting the opponents for you. And I was like, whoa, he plays very differently. With Gwenpool and Squirrel Girl, you kind of want to get up close and like start hitting them. With Kid Kaiju, you don't want to do that. You kind of want to be like running away while like summoning monsters to fight for you, which is kind of what I prefer in my RPGs. So Kid Kaiju, I think, is like right up my alley, but I do think he's a little hard to control. Because normally when you use your attacks, you kind of like auto lock on people who are like close to you, and then you use the movement stick to kind of run out of the way. You're normally not in a situation where you're actively trying to not get hit because you're literally a little kid while also trying to hit your enemies from afar. So it's like you kind of want to stand still to attack, but you kind of can't because your character's not meant to be like in the middle of the battle. Like if someone gets close to you, you need to get out of the way because you can't really just hit them by yourself. You got to hit them with your monsters. But if you're running away while trying to attack with your monsters will try and attack what's like in front of you. And if you're running away, hopefully no one's in front of you. So you end up in these really weird situations where you're just kind of whiffing attacks because you're trying to not get hit. But Kid Kaiju is pretty cool. He has a defense-based ability that allows him to put armor on his health bar. I'm not sure if armor is the proper term, but it seems like it gives your health bar additional defense. And I think that's nice because I think the point of that is to make it where you don't have to worry about running around too much and like dodging attacks. It lets you take a few hits while you're dishing out damage by summoning all these different monsters. And so much is happening on screen when you play as Kid Kaiju and you summon a ton of monsters at once. So it can be a lot to take in. I need to try and get used to the learning curve because he's so different from the other characters. But so far, he's like the most fun character to play on the team. Also, Squirrel Girl can summon a giant squirrel in Marvel Future Fight. It's supposedly an illusion of a squirrel, but I've boosted her ability to do that to be so high that the squirrel is actually like more than 100% stronger than Squirrel Girl herself. But the squirrel only lasts for 10 seconds. So you summon this giant squirrel that's like 124% more powerful than Squirrel Girl. Squirrel Girl, who's like a max level, max gear, 6-star mastery character, who for 10 seconds just can like go in on your enemies. So I think that's pretty dope, not gonna lie. But yeah, that's what I've been up to in Marvel Future Fight. Let me show you guys a picture of my team. So Squirrel Girl, level 60, 6-star mastery. Gwenpool, level 50, 5-star mastery. And Kid Kaiju, 6-star mastery, level 56. So if I can just get 4 more levels on Kid Kaiju, I should be able to max him out level-wise. And I can't max out his gear yet. His gear's almost maxed out, but they cap you on how high you can level up your gear for a character who's not max level. So once I hit max level for Kid Kaiju himself, then I'll be able to max out his gear. So that'll be cool. Also, as you guys can see in this image, I spent all my energy. Because I've been trying to level up Kid Kaiju doing these dimension missions. But let's see. Scrolling down through here. I've pretty much talked about most of my days so far, so let me talk about my plans for tomorrow. My plans for tomorrow are pretty much the same as always. I think I might watch some more of the recaps. Maybe I might play around more with like these Monroe Institute meditation techniques. Maybe read more of that document. I think I got a message on Fiverr. I haven't checked it yet for a new gig. Speaking of Fiverr, my last Fiverr gig was kind of weird. So I wrote that superhero story, and I was pretty proud of it. But the guy who I wrote it for hit me back up, and he was like, there's all this extra stuff that I want in the story that he didn't originally say that he wanted. And he tried to argue that the stuff that he did originally want wasn't in the story. And then I was like, so here in the story is where the stuff that you wanted was. And I was like pointing out like, you say this isn't in here? Here it is right here. You say like this isn't in here? Here it is right here. But he was trying to like demand a revision so that I could add all the new stuff, because I already kind of disproved that like all the old stuff was in it. And I was like, you didn't buy any revisions. Like for the superhero story gig that I do, there are different tiers, and he bought like the lowest tier, like the $5 tier, which comes with 0 revisions. So I'm like, if you want a revision, you gotta order a revision. And he kept threatening to like cancel the order, and I'm like, I already delivered. You know what I mean? Like, you don't really have grounds to cancel the order because you got what you asked for. You know, like you got what you like initially requested, and I already like delivered it to you like way in advance. Like I delivered it to him before it was due. Like multiple hours before it was due. So he hasn't canceled the order as far as I'm aware. I feel like he was just trying to bully me into doing a revision. It doesn't seem like he's done like a review or anything, but if he does do like a weird review based on like the experience, you're able to react to reviews. So if he does like say something weird, I'll just write a reaction where I kind of explain the situation. But I'm not too worried about it. But things like that happen sometimes. I once wrote like a book for someone. Like not just like a short story, like a whole superhero book. And they paid for the first half of the book. And then they did like the cancel order thing where they're like, oh, you finished the second half of the book? Oh, I'm going to cancel the order. So I only got paid for like half of the work on that. And it was like one of like my bigger like Fiverr projects. So that kind of sucked. So hopefully something like that doesn't happen again. If it does, it's a lot less money than that previous instance. But I mean, that's how Fiverr can be sometimes. Anyways, I think that's all I have for this video. I'd like to thank you all for watching. If any of the stuff that I talked about sounded interesting to you, definitely feel free to check out the links in the description. I believe everything that I've talked about today, except maybe like Marvel Future Fight. I don't have a link to Marvel Future Fight. But everything else that I talked about today, I believe is in the description box below if you guys want to check it out for yourselves. But thank you all for tuning in. If you guys like this video, make sure to smash that like button, favorite, comment, subscribe, and ding, 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 ring the notification bell to be notified whenever we do these videos. If you want to talk about any of the stuff that we discussed here, feel free to message me in the comment section below or on our Discord, link in the description. Thank you all once again. This is your host, your friend, your boy, Jet Black the one only, logging out. I have to go to bed. Peace. Chick the guy.